Hello, this is Matt Russell from the Daily FX Education team, and today I will be discussing Bollinger Bands and two approaches that I use in my application of Bollinger Bands to the currency market. The first thing I want you to understand is that both these strategies will occur between noon and midnight Eastern Standard Time, because typically that's the slowest time in the currency markets, and both of these approaches are more range-bound, or what I like to say, anti-vol or anti-volatility strategies. So two methods that I use. The first is 2 standard deviation on the 60-minute chart. The one thing I wanted to mention about Bollinger Bands is that Mr. Bollinger is a good salesman, because if you have an indicator, and again, what the 2 standard deviation means is that 95% of the time, using a standard bell curve and applying it to asset prices, 95% of the time, prices will stay contained within those bands. So if I hear that information, I'm going to go buy that indicator right away. The thing to understand, again, he's a good salesman, the thing to understand about the calculation of standard deviations is that each time prices move just a little bit above the bands, instantly that information is calculated into the standard deviation. So the market, it's a lot more malleable than you would expect when you make that statement. 95% of the time, prices are going to stay contained within the range. So that's something that I want to impart to newer traders, is that number, I would say, is a little bit, it's lower than 90% in my mind. I would say maybe about 85% of the time, again, because the bands will instantly adjust to any adverse price moves. So what I'm looking for on the 60-minute chart is for spikes above the Bollinger Bands, and then to have prices come and close back beneath the Bollinger Bands. And what I want to see on the chart that I'm currently viewing is 2 prior points, or 2 points of evidence that this particular approach is working. So on this chart we have a spike above and then a close below. Here we have another spike above and a close below. So I'm waiting for the next time that prices peak their head above that upper band. I'm going to look to enter, and this would be the same candle here. Once this candle closes back below, I'm going to go ahead and enter the market at this point right here, and I'm going to place my stop above the most recent relative high right here. And that's how I would approach using Bollinger Bands on a 60-minute chart. The next thing that I wanted to approach is using the 3 standard deviation method on a 5-minute chart. And this is a strategy I developed a few years ago, and you're essentially looking for back-breaking moves on a 5-minute chart. Now, the thing to understand is that using 3 standard deviations on a 5-minute chart is very similar to using 2 standard deviations on a 60-minute chart. Again, because all that price information is instantly calculated into the Bollinger Bands. So what I'm looking for is very similar on the 5-minute chart. I'm looking for prices to come up to the 3rd standard deviation, either on the upper band or the lower band, move above it, leave behind a long wick. At that point, I would look to enter, placing my stop above the high of that long wick. And similar to this approach, I want to have at least 2 points of evidence that this particular approach is working. Again, this is Matt Russell from the Daily FX Education team. Thank you for listening.